They say a mother's love never dies, but what they don't tell you is that a mother's intuition never dies either. I spent 365 days believing my son died of natural causes, crying myself to sleep every night, clutching his photo to my chest. But on the morning of his first death anniversary, an envelope slid under my door, changed everything. By sunset that day, I would discover that the woman I'd comforted, supported, and called daughter for 15 years had stolen more than just my son's life insurance. She'd stolen his last breath, and I was about to make sure the whole world knew it. The dawn light filtered through my bedroom curtains the same way it had every morning for the past year, but this morning felt different. Heavier. November 17th, 1 full year since I'd gotten that phone call that shattered my world into a million pieces. Mrs. Wilson, this is County General Hospital. I'm so sorry to inform you that your son, David, was brought in by ambulance approximately 40 minutes ago. I'm so sorry, ma'am. He didn't make it. I'd replayed those words in my mind every single day since. 7 years old, and I'd outlived my only child. No parent should ever have to bury their baby, no matter how grown that baby is. My David was 45 years old, successful, healthy, full of life. And then suddenly, he wasn't. The doctors said it was a massive heart attack, sudden cardiac arrest. They told me that sometimes these things just happen, even to people who seem perfectly healthy, even to people who jog 3 times a week and eat their vegetables and have everything to live for. I sat up in bed that morning, my joints aching the way they always did these days, and looked at the photo on my nightstand. David's graduation photo from college. That proud smile, those kind eyes. He had his father's eyes. Lord, how I missed them both. The house was too quiet. It had been too quiet for a year. David used to call me every Sunday morning without fail. "Hey, Mama," he'd say, his voice warm as summer sunshine. "Just checking on my best girl." And I'd tell him about my week, about the neighborhood gossip, about the new book I was reading. He always listened like what I had to say was the most important thing in the world. I pulled on my robe, the blue terry cloth one David had given me 3 Christmases ago, and shuffled toward the kitchen. My knees weren't what they used to be, and the arthritis in my left hip had been acting up something fierce lately. Getting old was not for the weak, that's for sure. I was halfway down the hallway when I heard it. A soft sliding sound at my front door. I froze. It was barely 6 in the morning. Who on earth would be at my door this early? My heart started racing, and I gripped the wall for support. Living alone at my age, you become cautious, hyper-aware of sounds that don't belong. I'd had Pastor James install a new deadbolt and a chain lock after David passed. The world felt less safe without my son in it. I crept toward the front door, my breath coming in short gasps. Through the peephole, I saw nothing. No one standing on my porch. But when I looked down, I could see the corner of a manila envelope poking out from under my door. My hands trembled as I unlocked the deadbolt and eased the door open, chain still engaged. The morning air was crisp and cold, and the street was empty except for Mr. Henderson across the way, walking his little terrier like he did every morning. The envelope lay there on my welcome mat, plain and unmarked except for my name written in block letters, Margaret Wilson. I looked left and right, but saw no one. Whoever had left it was long gone. I picked it up with shaking hands, brought it inside, and locked the door behind me. The envelope was thick, like there were several pages inside. My name on the front was written in black marker, the handwriting unfamiliar. No return address, no stamps. Hand-delivered. I carried it to my kitchen table and sat down, staring at it like it might bite me. Something about it felt wrong, ominous, like opening it would change everything. "Don't be foolish, Margaret," I said aloud to myself. I did that sometimes these days, talk to myself. It made the house feel less empty. I slid my finger under the seal and opened it. Inside were several photocopied pages. The first one made my blood run cold. It was a life insurance policy. A life insurance policy on my son's life, from a company I'd never heard of. The coverage amount made me gasp out loud, $750,000. But that wasn't what made my hands start shaking so hard I nearly dropped the papers. It was the beneficiary name. Primary beneficiary Linda Mary Carter Wilson. Relationship to insured spouse. Benefit amount 100%. Linda, my daughter-in-law. David's widow. My mind raced. I knew David had a life insurance policy through his job. Linda had mentioned it once. Said it was enough to cover the mortgage and help with the kids' college funds. She'd said maybe $50,000–$60,000. Enough to get by. But $750,000, and I'd never heard a word about it. My chest felt tight. I forced myself to breathe slowly, In through my nose, out through my mouth, the way my doctor had taught me. I flipped to the next page. It was another photocopy, this time of what looked like a policy amendment. My eyes scanned the document, trying to make sense of the legal language. The policy had been taken out 8 months before David died. The monthly premiums were $342, and according to this document, David's signature was right there at the bottom. But something about it looked odd. The signature seemed off somehow. Too smooth, too perfect. David's real signature always had a little hook at the end of the D, and his Wilson always slanted upward. This one was too straight, too careful. My pulse was hammering in my ears now. I flipped to the last page in the envelope, and my breath caught in my throat. It was a handwritten note on plain white paper, the same block letters as on the envelope. MRS. Warabiptse Mendakush S. Arbachai Mastias Tierhat Nigisht. Your son dis Arbachai Gestai. Afarided. I read it 3 times, 4 times. The words blurred in front of my eyes as tears started to well up. Ask her about the medication. Ask her why she was there that night. Linda had been the one to call 911 that night. She'd told me she'd come home from her book club meeting and found David collapsed in their bedroom. She'd called the ambulance right away, tried to do CPR, but it was too late. He was already gone. That's what she'd told me. That's what she'd told the police. That's what she'd told everyone. But this note was suggesting something else entirely. I sat at that kitchen table for I don't know how long, those papers spread out in front of me, my mind spinning in 1,000 different directions. This couldn't be right. This couldn't be real. Linda loved David. They'd been married for 15 years. They had 2 beautiful children together. She'd cried at his funeral. She'd held my hand and cried with me. But then again I thought back over the past year. After the initial shock and grief, Linda had been, what was the word? Composed. Calm. She'd handled all the estate matters efficiently. She'd sold their house within 3 months and moved into a fancy new condo across town. She'd been traveling. I'd seen photos on her Facebook of her in Miami, in Las Vegas, at some spa resort in Arizona. At the time, I'd thought maybe she was running from the grief. Different people handle loss in different ways. I'd been to enough funerals in my 67 years to know that. But now, looking at these papers, a darker thought crept into my mind. What if she wasn't running from grief? What if she was celebrating? I pressed my hands to my face, trying to stop the thoughts, trying to push away the horrible suspicion that was growing in my chest like a cancer. The clock on my kitchen wall said 6:47 a.m. The memorial service Linda had organized was scheduled for 3:00 p.m. that afternoon. She'd insisted on having it at my house, said it would be more intimate, more meaningful. I'd agreed, grateful that she wanted to honor David's memory. Now I wondered if there was another reason she wanted to be here. I gathered up the papers with trembling hands and slid them back into the envelope. I needed to think. I needed to figure out what to do with this information. If this was real, if this was true, then everything I thought I knew about the past year was a lie. And if Linda had done what this note was suggesting, I couldn't even finish the thought. It was too horrible. Too monstrous. But a mother knows. Deep down in that place where intuition lives, where you know your child's cry from 100 other children, where you can feel when something's wrong even when they're miles away, I knew. Something about David's death had never sat right with me. I'd pushed the feeling down, told myself I was just looking for someone to blame because I couldn't accept that he was really gone. But now, holding this envelope, that feeling came roaring back. My son didn't just die. My son was murdered, and the woman I'd welcomed into my family, the woman I'd loved like a daughter, the mother of my grandchildren, she was the one who killed him. I couldn't stay in that house. The walls felt like they were closing in on me, and the silence was suffocating. I needed air. I needed to think. I needed to talk to someone before I lost my mind completely. I got dressed in a fog, barely aware of what I was putting on. Black slacks, a gray cardigan. Appropriate for a day of mourning, though now I wasn't sure if I was mourning my son's death or mourning the innocence I'd lost in discovering how he might have died. The envelope went into my purse. I couldn't leave it lying around, not with Linda coming over later to set up for the memorial service. I grabbed my keys and headed out to my old Toyota. The morning was cold and gray, the kind of November day that makes you feel the winter coming in your bones. I drove on autopilot, my mind replaying every interaction I'd had with Linda over the past year, looking for signs I'd missed, clues I'd been too blind with grief to see. 10 minutes later, I pulled up in front of New Hope Baptist Church. Pastor James's car was already in the parking lot. He was always there early, preparing for the day, praying in his office before the church got busy. Pastor James Monroe had been my friend for over 30 years. He'd married my husband and me. He'd baptized David. He'd preached at my husband's funeral when David was just 10 years old. He'd been there through every major moment of my life, the good and the terrible. If there was anyone I could trust with this, it was him. I found him in his office, sitting at his old wooden desk with his reading glasses perched on his nose, going over what looked like Sunday's sermon notes. He looked up when I knocked on the open door, and his weathered face immediately creased with concern. "Margaret, Sister Margaret, what's wrong?" I must have looked as terrible as I felt. Pastor James rose from his chair and came around the desk, guiding me to the small sofa in his office. He was 70 years old but still strong, still steady. The kind of man who felt like an anchor in a storm. "Pastor," I said, and my voice cracked. "Pastor, I need to show you something. And I need you to tell me I'm not losing my mind." I pulled the envelope from my purse with shaking hands and gave it to him. He sat beside me and read through the documents slowly, his expression growing more grave with each page. When he got to the handwritten note, I saw his jaw tighten. "When did you get this?" he asked quietly. "This morning. Someone slipped it under my door. I don't know who." Pastor James was quiet for a long moment, his eyes moving back over the insurance policy documents. $750,000, he said finally. "And you knew nothing about this policy?" "Nothing. Linda told me there was insurance through David's work, but nothing like this. Nothing even close to this." He set the papers down on the coffee table and turned to face me fully. "Margaret, I need to tell you something. Something I probably should have told you months ago, but I convinced myself it wasn't my place. I convinced myself I was reading too much into things. My heart was pounding. What is it?" Pastor James took a deep breath. "About 3 weeks before David died, he came to see me. He came here to the church, said he needed to talk in confidence. He looked worried, Margaret. Stressed. Not like himself at all." "What did he say?" "He said he hadn't been feeling well. Dizzy spells, nausea, headaches. He'd been to his regular doctor twice, but they couldn't find anything wrong. They ran tests, his heart was fine, his blood pressure was fine, everything came back normal. But he kept getting worse." I leaned forward, hanging on every word. "And he said Linda had been giving him supplements. New vitamins she'd ordered online, said they were supposed to help with stress and energy. He'd been taking them for a few months, and that's when the symptoms started. He told me he'd tried to stop taking them, told Linda he didn't think they were agreeing with him, but she insisted. She said he needed them, that he'd been working too hard, that he needed to trust her." The room felt like it was spinning. Did he think Linda was doing something to him? He didn't say it outright. But Margaret, the look in his eyes, he was scared. I could see it. He asked me to pray with him, and we did. I told him if he was really worried, he should go to a different doctor, get a second opinion, maybe stop taking anything that wasn't prescribed by a physician. He said he would. He promised me he would. Pastor James's voice broke a little. 3 weeks later, he was dead, and I've been carrying that conversation around like a stone in my chest ever since. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself it was just a coincidence. But Margaret, when I saw Linda at the funeral, when I watched her cry over his casket, something felt wrong. Something felt performative. I felt tears streaming down my face. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you say something?" "Because I had no proof." He spread his hands helplessly. "What was I going to say? I think your daughter-in-law might have hurt David because he mentioned he was taking vitamins she gave him. The doctor said it was a heart attack. Natural causes." I would have sounded like a crazy old man seeing conspiracies where there weren't any. "And you were grieving so deeply, Margaret. I didn't want to add to your pain with suspicions I couldn't prove. I understood, I did, but it didn't make the ache any less sharp. This note." Pastor James tapped the paper. "Says to ask her about the medication. Ask her why she was there that night." "What does that mean, why she was there that night?" I wiped my eyes. "Linda said she found him when she came home from her book club meeting. She said she was out, and when she got back around 9:30, he was collapsed in their bedroom. But you don't know that for certain. I only know what she told me. What she told the police." Pastor James stood up and paced to his window, looking out over the church's small garden. "Margaret, if what this note is suggesting is true, if Linda somehow caused David's death, We need to be very careful about how we proceed. We need evidence. We need to be absolutely certain before we make any accusations. I know. My voice was barely a whisper. But Pastor, how do I sit in my living room this afternoon, at my son's memorial service, and look that woman in the eye? How do I smile and accept condolences and pretend everything is fine when I'm wondering if she murdered my child? He turned back to face me, his expression stern but compassionate. You do it because until we know the truth, we can't tip our hand. If Linda suspects that you're suspicious, if she thinks you know something, she could destroy evidence. She could run, and then we'll never get justice for David. Justice for David. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My baby deserved justice. He deserved the truth to come out. What do? I asked. How do we find out the truth? Pastor James came back to the sofa and sat down. First, we need to figure out who sent you this envelope. Whoever it is, they know something. They have access to information that could help us, and they want the truth to come out too. Or they wouldn't have sent this to you. A friend. I quoted from the note. That's what they signed it? A friend. A friend who knew where you lived and what time to deliver this to avoid being seen. Someone who knew about the insurance policy. Someone who has suspicions about the medication. Pastor James's eyes narrowed in thought. Could it be someone from David's workplace? A neighbor? Someone from Linda's book club? I shook my head. I don't know. I don't even know where to start. We'll figure it out. But Margaret, there's something else we need to do. We need to talk to a lawyer. Someone who specializes in this kind of thing. Someone who can tell us what our options are, legally speaking. A lawyer. The word felt heavy in my mouth. Pastor, I don't have money for some expensive attorney. I know someone, he said gently. Rachel Thompson. She goes to the church, well, she used to before she moved her practice downtown. Young woman, sharp as a tack. She does some pro bono work for cases she believes in. Let me call her, see if she'll meet with us. Today, if possible. I nodded, feeling numb. This was all moving so fast. Just 2 hours ago, I'd woken up thinking today would be about remembering my son, honoring his memory. Now I was talking about lawyers and evidence and murder. Murder. The word echoed in my head like a drum. Pastor James pulled out his cell phone and stepped into the hallway to make the call. I sat there on his sofa, staring at those papers on the coffee table, and for the first time in a year, I let myself feel something besides grief. I let myself feel anger. Rage, actually, hot and fierce and burning through my chest like wildfire. If Linda had done this, if she had taken my son away from me for money, for a life insurance payout, if she had poisoned him slowly, watched him suffer, and then played the grieving widow at his funeral, I didn't know what I was capable of. I'd always been a peaceful woman, a Christian woman. Turn the other cheek. Forgive those who trespass against you. I'd lived my whole life by those principles. But this was my child. My only child, and a mother's love, a mother's fury, was a force of nature that transcended everything else. Pastor James came back into the office. Rachel can meet us at 11 o'clock. Her office is on Martin Luther King Boulevard, above the coffee shop. She's canceling her other appointments for us. Thank you, I whispered. He sat back down beside me and took my hand. His grip was warm and steady. Margaret, we're going to get through this. We're going to find out the truth, and whatever that truth is, we'll handle it together. You're not alone. But I felt alone. I felt more alone than I had since the day my husband died 35 years ago. Because this wasn't just about losing David anymore. This was about discovering that someone I'd loved and trusted had potentially destroyed my entire world. We sat there in silence for a while, and then Pastor James said softly, "There's one more thing David told me that day he came to see me. Something I think you should know." I looked up at him. He said, "Pastor, if anything ever happens to me, promise me you'll look after my mama. Promise me you'll make sure she's okay." I told him nothing was going to happen to him, that he was being paranoid. But he made me promise anyway. And I did. Pastor James's eyes were wet. "I'm keeping that promise now, Margaret. We're going to find out what happened to your boy." I squeezed his hand, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. My son had known. On some level, David had known something was wrong. He'd felt it. He'd tried to protect himself, tried to protect me, and I hadn't been there to save him. But I could do this. I could fight for him now. I could make sure that whoever took him away from me paid for what they'd done. Even if it meant destroying the family I thought I had left. Rachel Thompson's law office was nothing like I expected. I'd been imagining some fancy high-rise with marble floors and expensive art on the walls. Instead, It was a modest suite above Blessed Grounds coffee shop, with worn carpet and mismatched furniture that looked like it had been donated from various sources. But the woman who greeted us at the door looked every bit the sharp attorney Pastor James had described. She was maybe 38, wearing a crisp navy suit, her natural hair pulled back in a neat bun. Her eyes were intelligent and kind, and when she shook my hand her grip was firm and confident. "Mrs. Wilson, I'm so sorry for your loss," she said, and something in her voice told me she meant it. "Please, come in. Sit down." Her office was small but organized. Law books lined one wall, and her desk was covered with neat stacks of files and a laptop computer. She gestured us to 2 chairs across from her desk and took her seat, pulling out a yellow legal pad. "Pastor James gave me a brief overview on the phone," she said, "but I'd like to hear everything from the beginning. Take your time, Mrs. Wilson. Tell me about your son and what happened." So I did. I told her about David, about what a good man he'd been, about his marriage to Linda, their 2 children, my grandbabies, Emma who was 13 and Tyler who was 10. I told her about the phone call a year ago, about how the doctors said it was sudden cardiac arrest, about how I'd accepted it even though something in my gut had never felt right. Then I showed her the envelope. Rachel read through every page carefully, making notes on her legal pad. When she got to the handwritten note, she read it twice before looking up at me. "Who delivered this?" she asked. "I don't know. Someone slipped it under my door around 6 this morning. I never saw them." "And you have no idea who might have sent it?" I shook my head. "Not a clue." Rachel tapped her pen against her lips, thinking. "The fact that someone had access to these insurance documents is significant. This isn't public information. Whoever sent this either works for the insurance company, works in a position where they'd have access to financial records, or they're close to Linda somehow." "Could it be someone from David's workplace?" Pastor James asked. "Someone who knew about the policy?" "Possibly. Though typically, individual life insurance policies like this aren't filed through an employer. They're private purchases." Rachel looked at the policy details again. This was purchased through Metropolitan Life. The premiums were being paid through automatic withdrawal from a checking account. "Do you know if David and Linda had separate accounts or joint accounts?" "Joint," I said. "I know because Linda mentioned once that it made things easier for household expenses. So David would have seen these withdrawals." Rachel mused. $342 a month. That's not an insignificant amount. He would have noticed it on the bank statements. Unless Linda handled all the finances. The thought made my stomach churn. I remembered David mentioning once that Linda had taken over paying the bills because he was so busy with work. He'd seemed grateful at the time, happy to have one less thing to worry about. Now I wondered if that had been intentional on Linda's part. "Control the money, control the information." "Mrs. Wilson," Rachel said gently, "I need to ask you some difficult questions. Is that okay?" I nodded. "In the time leading up to David's death, did you notice any changes in their relationship? Any arguments, any signs of trouble in the marriage?" I thought back, trying to remember. No, they seemed fine, happy even. Linda was always posting photos on Facebook of the family, date nights with David, the kids' activities. Everything looked perfect. And after his death, how did Linda behave? Grief-stricken at first. She cried at the funeral. She couldn't stop crying. But then, I paused, trying to put my finger on what had bothered me. After a few weeks, she seemed to bounce back quickly. She was making plans, handling the estate, selling the house. She said she needed a fresh start, that the house had too many memories. Within 3 months, she'd moved into a new condo, a really nice place. I remember thinking it seemed expensive, but she said David's life insurance had been enough to cover it. "Did she ever tell you how much the life insurance was?" "She said around 50 or 60,000. Enough to pay off the mortgage and help with the kids' college funds." Rachel made a note. "But according to this policy, she received $750,000. That's a significant discrepancy." The number made me dizzy every time I heard it. $750,000. A fortune. Enough to kill for. God, had I really just thought that? But I had. And I couldn't unthink it. "What about this note?" I pointed to the handwritten message. "Ask her about the medication. Pastor James told me that David came to see him a few weeks before he died. Said he'd been having symptoms and that Linda had been giving him supplements." Pastor James nodded. "That's correct. David said he'd been feeling dizzy, nauseous, having headaches. His doctor couldn't find anything wrong, but the symptoms persisted. He mentioned that Linda had given him new vitamins, insisted he take them even when he wanted to stop. Rachel's expression darkened. That's concerning, very concerning. Did David still have these supplements? Do you know what happened to them? I have no idea, I said. Everything from their house would have been packed up when Linda moved. Either she kept them or threw them away. And the note says ask her why she was there that night. Mrs. Wilson, can you tell me exactly what Linda told you about the night David died? I closed my eyes, remembering. She said she'd gone to her book club meeting that evening. They met the second Tuesday of every month. She said she left around 6:30. The meeting was from 7 to 9, and when she got home around 9:30, she found David collapsed in their bedroom. She called 911 immediately and tried to do CPR, but it was too late. Do you know if the police verified her timeline? I don't know. I assume they did. The death was ruled natural causes. There was no investigation. Rachel leaned back in her chair. Here's what we're dealing with, Mrs. Wilson. If your son was poisoned, and I'm not saying he was, but if that's what this note is suggesting, then we need to prove it. And that's going to be extremely difficult a year after the fact. My heart sank. So there's nothing we can do. I didn't say that. Rachel's eyes were sharp, focused. What I'm saying is we need to be strategic. We need evidence. And we need to be very, very careful. What kind of evidence? Pastor James asked. Rachel counted off on her fingers. First, we need to verify Linda's alibi for that night. Was she really at book club? Can anyone confirm she was there the whole time? Second, we need to find out if there were any witnesses to David's condition in the days and weeks before he died. Coworkers, friends, family members who noticed he wasn't well. Third, we need to get our hands on David's medical records, see what his doctors noted. Fourth, and this is the big one, we need to find out what happened to David's body. I felt like I'd been slapped. What do you mean? What happened to his body? Rachel's voice was gentle but firm. Was there an autopsy performed? Yes. The hospital did an autopsy because the death was sudden and unexpected. But they found he'd had a heart attack. That's what killed him. A heart attack can be caused by many things, Rachel said carefully, including certain types of poisoning. Some substances can cause fatal cardiac arrhythmias that look exactly like a natural heart attack. If David was being given something toxic over a period of weeks or months, it could have built up in his system and caused his heart to stop. The room was spinning. Are you saying they might have missed it? That it might not have been natural causes after all? I'm saying it's possible. Autopsies don't automatically test for every possible toxin. They test for common things: alcohol, illegal drugs, some prescription medications. But there are plenty of substances that wouldn't show up in a standard toxicology screen. If no one suspected foul play, there would be no reason to look for them. So what do we do? My voice was shaking. Rachel took a deep breath. We need to request a copy of the autopsy report and the toxicology results. I can file that request today. Then we need to consult with a forensic toxicologist, someone who can look at the findings and tell us if anything was missed or if there's anything suspicious. And if there is, Pastor James asked quietly, then we go to the police. We present everything we have: the insurance policy, David's symptoms before his death, any inconsistencies in Linda's story, and we ask them to reopen the investigation. I felt a spark of hope for the first time since I'd opened that envelope this morning. You think they'd do that? You think they'd listen? If we have enough evidence to suggest that David's death wasn't natural, yes. The police take insurance fraud very seriously, especially when it's connected to a potential homicide. $750,000 is a strong motive for murder. Murder. There was that word again. So stark, so final. Rachel leaned forward, her expression serious. But Mrs. Wilson, I need you to understand something. If we pursue this, if we start digging into Linda's life and David's death, things are going to get ugly. Linda will know we're investigating. She'll lawyer up. She might try to turn people against you. And if we're wrong, if there's an innocent explanation for all of this, you could damage your relationship with your daughter-in-law and your grandchildren permanently. And if we're right, I asked quietly, if we're right, then your grandchildren are going to find out that their mother killed their father. They're going to lose both parents. And that's going to devastate them. I thought of Emma and Tyler. Sweet Emma with her bright smile and her love of reading. Tyler with his endless energy and his obsession with dinosaurs. They'd already lost their daddy. How could I be the one to take their mother away too? But then I thought of David, of his kind eyes and warm laugh, Of the way he'd called me every Sunday without fail. Of how he'd raised those two beautiful children to be good, kind people. Of how he'd worked hard his whole life, never hurt anyone, always tried to do the right thing. And I thought of him coming to Pastor James, scared and sick, saying something wasn't right, trying to protect himself but not knowing how. My baby had been murdered. I felt it in my bones now. And whoever did it was walking around free, living off the money they'd gotten for killing him. I looked Rachel Thompson straight in the eyes. "I want the truth," I said. "Whatever it is, whatever it costs, I want to know what really happened to my son, and if someone took him from me, I want them to pay." Rachel nodded slowly. "Then that's what we'll do. But Mrs. Wilson, this memorial service this afternoon, you need to act completely normal. You cannot let Linda suspect that anything is wrong. Can you do that?" Could I? Could I sit in my living room with the woman who might have murdered my child and pretend everything was fine? I thought of David again, of what he would want me to do. He'd want me to be strong. He'd want me to fight for him. "Yes," I said firmly, "I can do it." Pastor James squeezed my shoulder. "I'll be right there with you, Margaret, every step of the way." Rachel began gathering up the documents. "I'm going to make copies of everything in this envelope and start the process of requesting David's autopsy records. In the meantime, I want you both to think about anyone who might have sent this to you. A coworker of David's, a friend, a neighbor, someone who knew enough to be suspicious. We need to find out who our mystery friend is." "And what do I do at the service?" I asked. "Just talk to people. Act normal. Talk to people." Rachel agreed. "Pay attention to Linda. Watch how she acts, what she says, who she talks to. Sometimes people slip up when they think they're safe. And Mrs. Wilson." She looked at me seriously. "If Linda says anything about David's last days, about his health, about that night, I want you to remember every word. Every detail could be important." We stood to leave, and Rachel walked us to the door. "I'll call you tomorrow morning with an update on the autopsy request. And Mrs. Wilson, I believe you. I believe something happened to your son, and I'm going to do everything in my power to help you find out the truth." As Pastor James and I walked down the stairs to the street, the November wind hit us like a slap. I pulled my cardigan tighter around myself. "You doing okay?" Pastor James asked. "No," I said honestly, "but I'm going to be, because I had a purpose now. I had a mission. My son's memorial service was in 4 hours, and I was going to have to sit across from his possible killer and smile. But behind that smile, I would be watching, listening, gathering every piece of information I could." Linda thought she'd gotten away with it. She thought she was safe. She had no idea that her whole world was about to come crashing down. By 2:30 that afternoon, my living room had been transformed. Linda had arrived an hour earlier with her sister Diane and a car full of supplies. There were white lilies everywhere, David's favorite flowers, and photos of him arranged on every surface. Baby pictures, wedding photos, pictures of him with the kids. His whole life laid out in frames. I stood in the kitchen doorway watching Linda work, and it took everything in me not to scream. She looked elegant in a black dress, her hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail, her makeup subtle but perfect. She moved through my house like she owned it, directing Diane where to put things, arranging the food on my dining room table, checking her phone every few minutes. "Margaret." She looked up and saw me, her face breaking into a warm smile. "There you are. I was starting to worry you'd gotten lost in your own house. Come here, honey, tell me what you think." I forced myself to walk over to her. She pulled me into a hug, and I had to fight the urge to pull away. Her perfume was overwhelming, something expensive and floral that made my stomach turn. "It looks beautiful," I managed to say. "You've done a wonderful job. I wanted it to be perfect. David deserves perfect." Her eyes got a little misty, and for a moment I almost doubted everything, almost convinced myself that the envelope had been a mistake, that this woman holding me was genuinely grieving. But then I remembered. $750,000. The note. David's visit to Pastor James. I stepped back from her embrace. "Where are Emma and Tyler?" "I thought they were coming." "They're with my mother," Linda said, waving her hand dismissively. "I thought it might be too hard for them, you know. All these people talking about their dad, dredging up memories. Emma's been doing so well lately. I didn't want to set her back." My heart clenched. I hadn't seen my grandchildren in over 2 weeks. Linda had been making excuses. They were busy with school, they had activities, they needed space to heal. But now I wondered if there was another reason she was keeping them away from me. "I miss them," I said quietly. I'd really like to see them soon. Of course! We'll set something up, maybe next weekend. Linda's smile was bright, but her eyes were already moving past me, checking the room, making sure everything was in place. Mrs. Wilson, Diane, Linda's sister, approached with a platter of sandwiches. Where would you like these? On the dining table is fine, dear. Thank you. Diane was younger than Linda by about 5 years, softer around the edges in every way. She'd always been kind to me, and right now she looked genuinely sad. I wondered what she knew. Had Linda told her about the insurance money? Did she have any suspicions about her sister? The doorbell rang, and Linda rushed to answer it. That'll be the first guests. Margaret, are you ready? Ready to smile and shake hands and accept condolences while studying every word Linda said for signs of guilt. Ready to play a part while my heart was breaking all over again. As ready as I'll ever be, I said. The next 2 hours were a blur of faces and voices. People from David's work came, neighbors I'd known for years, members of our church congregation. Everyone had a story about David, something kind to say. It should have been comforting. Instead, it felt like torture, because through it all, I watched Linda. She was perfect, absolutely perfect. She cried at the right moments, laughed softly at funny memories, held people's hands and thanked them for coming. She played the grieving widow like she'd been rehearsing for a year. Maybe she had been. Pastor James stayed close to me the whole time, a steady presence at my elbow. I caught his eye more than once, and I could see he was watching Linda too. Around 4 o'clock, a man I didn't recognize came through the door. He was maybe 50, wearing a suit that looked a little too tight, with thinning hair and nervous eyes. He shook my hand quickly. Mrs. Wilson, I'm so sorry for your loss. David was a good man, thank you. And you are? Robert Henshaw. I worked with David at Consolidated Tech. We were in the same department. Oh yes, David mentioned you. I was lying, I'd never heard the name before in my life, but I wanted to keep him talking. It's good of you to come. Robert shifted uncomfortably. I almost didn't. I mean, it's been a year, and I know Linda organized this, and I wasn't sure if I should. Something in his tone made my antenna go up. Why wouldn't you come? He glanced around nervously, then lowered his voice. Look, I probably shouldn't say anything, but David and I were pretty close, and the week before he died, he seemed really off. Sick. He actually left work early twice that week, which wasn't like him at all. I asked him if he was okay, and he said, What? What did he say? Robert looked at me with troubled eyes. He said he thought something was wrong with him, that his wife had been giving him supplements to help with stress, but he'd been feeling worse and worse. He said he'd stopped taking them, but he still didn't feel right. He asked me if I thought he should go to a different doctor, get a second opinion. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Did he go? Did he see another doctor? I don't know. We had that conversation on a Thursday. The following Tuesday I got a call from HR saying David had died. Heart attack, just like that. Robert shook his head. I've thought about that conversation 100 times since then. I should have pushed him harder to see a doctor. I should have. Robert? Linda's voice cut through the room like a knife. She appeared at his elbow, her smile bright but her eyes cold. Robert Henshaw, I didn't see you come in. How are you? I'm fine. Just paying my respects. That's so kind of you. David always spoke so highly of you. She looped her arm through his in a gesture that looked friendly, but I could see was controlling. Let me introduce you to some of the other people from David's work. You all should connect, share memories. And just like that, she steered him away from me across the room, into a conversation with a group of people I didn't know. Robert looked back at me once, and I could see the discomfort on his face. Linda had shut him down. Deliberately, she didn't want him talking to me. Pastor James appeared at my side. You catch that? He murmured. Every word, I whispered back. He confirmed what David told you. The supplements, the symptoms, everything. That woman is watching you like a hawk watching a rabbit. I looked across the room and saw that he was right. Linda was still talking to Robert and the others, but her eyes kept darting back to me, checking, monitoring. She knew something was off. Maybe she didn't know what, but she sensed it. I needed to be more careful. Margaret. A soft voice beside me. I turned to find Jessica Porter, one of the women from Linda's book club. She was holding a cup of coffee and looking at me with sad eyes. I just wanted to say how sorry I am. David was such a wonderful person. Thank you, Jessica. It means a lot that you're here. Of course. Linda's been through so much this year. We've all tried to be there for her. The book club girls. We've really rallied around her. My mind flashed back to the note. Ask her why she was there that night. It's good she has friends, I said carefully. I know she was at your book club meeting the night it happened. Jessica's face fell. Yes. God, that was awful. We were all reading and discussing. And then her phone rang and she fell apart. We all did. None of us could believe it. What time did she get the call? I kept my voice casual, just making conversation. I don't know exactly. Maybe 9:30, quarter to 10. We usually wrap up around 9, but that night we'd gone a little longer because we were having such a good discussion. Linda had actually been checking her phone a lot that evening, like she was anxious about something. When it rang, she stepped into the hallway to answer it, and then we heard her scream. 9:30 or quarter to 10. Linda had told me she got home around 9:30 and found David then. But if she didn't get the call until 9:30 or later, and she was still at book club when she got it, that didn't make sense. I must have looked confused because Jessica touched my arm. Are you okay? You look pale. I'm fine. Just it's hard, hearing about that night. I'm sure it is. If you ever need to talk, Margaret, I'm here. Linda has my number. Jessica squeezed my hand and moved away to talk to someone else. I found Pastor James again. We need to talk, I said under my breath. Now. We slipped out onto my back porch, closing the door behind us. The November air was cold, but I barely felt it. What is it? Pastor James asked. Jessica Porter just told me that Linda was at book club when she got the call about David. She said Linda's phone rang around 9:30 or 9:45, and Linda was still there with the group. Pastor James frowned. But Linda told you she came home and found David collapsed, then called 911. Exactly. So either Jessica is wrong about the timeline, or Linda lied about when she found David. Or, Pastor James said slowly, Linda knew David was already dead before she left book club. She knew because she'd done something to him before she left the house that evening. The words hung in the cold air between us. She could have given him something, I said, my voice shaking. Something that would kill him while she was out establishing an alibi. Then she waited for the right time to discover his body. We need to tell Rachel about this. Tonight. The back door opened, and we both jumped. Linda stood there, her expression concerned but something harder underneath. Margaret, Pastor James, is everything all right? People are looking for you. We just needed some air, I said quickly. It's overwhelming in there. Linda stepped onto the porch, closing the door behind her. The three of us stood there in the fading daylight, and I felt like a rabbit trapped between a wolf and the edge of a cliff. I wanted to thank you, Linda said, looking at me, for letting me do this, for letting me honor David this way. I know this past year has been so hard on you. It's been hard on all of us, I said carefully. Yes, but especially you. Losing a child I can't even imagine. She reached out and took my hand, and her skin was cold. You know I think of you as family, right? You're not just my mother-in-law. You're like a mother to me. I hope you know that. She was lying. I could feel it. This warm speech, this show of affection, it was all performance. She was testing me, trying to gauge if I suspected anything. I know, dear, I said, forcing a smile. And you've been such a comfort to me this year. Good. Linda squeezed my hand. Because I worry about you, Margaret. You're all alone in this big house. You're getting older. I worry about your health, about your state of mind. There was something in the way she said it. A subtle threat wrapped in concern. Pastor James cleared his throat. Mrs. Wilson is doing just fine. She has her church family and her friends looking after her. Linda's eyes flicked to him, and for just a second I saw something sharp and dangerous there. Then it was gone, replaced by her warm smile. Of course I'm glad she has you, Pastor James. Now come on, both of you. Let's go back inside before people think something's wrong. As she opened the door and stepped back into the house, Pastor James and I exchanged a look. She knows, his eyes said. I know. Mine answered back. The game had begun, and I was playing for my son's life, or at least for justice for his death. By the time the last guest left around 6:30, I was exhausted. Linda and Diane cleaned up, packing away the leftover food, taking down some of the decorations. You should keep the photos out, Linda said, gesturing to the pictures of David scattered around my living room. It's nice to have him here with you. Yes, I said quietly. It is. Linda gave me one more hug at the door. I'll call you soon to set up a time for you to see Emma and Tyler. They miss their grandma. I miss them too. As soon as her car pulled away from the curb, I locked the door and sagged against it. My phone rang. It was Rachel Thompson, Mrs. Wilson, I got the preliminary autopsy report. We need to meet. Tomorrow morning, first thing. Can you come to my office at 8? What did you find? I asked, my heart racing. Not over the phone. But Margaret, there's something here. Something the medical examiner noted but didn't follow up on. I think we have a case. I closed my eyes, tears streaming down my face. I'll be there at 8, I said. After I hung up, I walked through my quiet house, looking at all the photos of David that Linda had so carefully arranged. My beautiful boy. My kind, good son. I'm gonna get justice for you, baby. I whispered to his smiling face in our favorite photo, him at age 7, missing his 2 front teeth, holding up a fish he'd caught on our one and only camping trip. I promise you, Mama's gonna make this right. Somewhere across town, Linda was probably pouring herself a glass of wine, congratulating herself on another successful performance. She probably felt safe. Untouchable. She had no idea that the walls were closing in. And I was the one pushing them. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw David's face. Sometimes he was 7 years old, grinning with that gap-toothed smile. Sometimes he was 45, the way he'd looked the last time I saw him alive, just 2 weeks before he died. We'd had Sunday dinner together, just the two of us, because Linda had taken the kids to visit her mother. He'd looked tired that day. I remembered that now, pale. He'd pushed his food around his plate more than he'd eaten it. You feeling okay, baby? I'd asked him. Just tired, Mama. Work's been crazy. I'll be fine. But he hadn't been fine, and I'd let it go. I'd accepted his answer because I'd trusted that he knew his own body, that he'd see a doctor if something was really wrong. Now I knew he had seen a doctor. Multiple times. And they'd found nothing because they hadn't known what to look for. By 7:30 the next morning, I was dressed and ready, sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee I couldn't drink. My hands were shaking too much. Pastor James picked me up at 7:45, and we drove to Rachel's office in silence. Rachel was waiting for us, looking like she'd slept about as much as I had. There were dark circles under her eyes, and her desk was covered with papers and open law books. I've been up most of the night, she said without preamble. Sit down. Both of you. We sat. Rachel pulled out a thick file and opened it. This is David's autopsy report. I got it late yesterday afternoon, and I've been going through it with a fine-tooth comb. I also consulted with a forensic toxicologist I know, Dr. Marcus Webb. He's one of the best in the state, and he agreed to look at this as a favor to me. My mouth was dry. What did you find? Rachel pulled out several pages and spread them on the desk so we could see. The autopsy confirmed that David died of cardiac arrest. His heart stopped. That part is straightforward. But here's what's interesting. She pointed to a section of the report. The medical examiner noted several things that caught his attention but that he ultimately dismissed as inconsequential. What things? Pastor James asked. First, David had elevated levels of digoxin in his blood. Digoxin is a medication used to treat heart conditions. It helps regulate heart rhythm. David's medical records show he was prescribed digoxin 2 years ago when he had a brief episode of atrial fibrillation. He took it for 6 months, then his doctor discontinued it because his heart rhythm had normalized. So why was it in his system? I asked. That's the question. The medical examiner noted it, but assumed David had been taking old medication, perhaps because he'd been having heart symptoms again. But here's the thing about digoxin. It has a very narrow therapeutic window. That means the difference between a helpful dose and a toxic dose is very small, and David's levels were high. Not astronomically high, but higher than they should have been. Rachel pulled out another page. Second, the medical examiner noted that David's potassium levels were low. Hypokalemia, it's called. Low potassium can cause heart arrhythmias all by itself. Combined with elevated digoxin levels, it's a recipe for cardiac arrest. My heart was pounding. Were you saying someone gave him too much digoxin? I'm saying it's possible. Dr. Webb reviewed the report, and he said that if someone wanted to cause a heart attack that would look natural, digoxin toxicity would be one way to do it, especially if the victim already had a prescription for it at some point. It wouldn't raise immediate red flags. But David wasn't taking digoxin anymore, Pastor James said. His doctor had stopped prescribing it. Correct. But Linda would have known he'd taken it before. She would have known there might be old pills in the house. Or she could have gotten a prescription filled in David's name. Doctors sometimes don't check thoroughly if a patient requests a refill of a medication they've taken before. I felt sick. The supplements. David told you and Pastor James that Linda was giving him supplements. What if they weren't supplements at all? What if she was crushing up digoxin pills and putting them in vitamin capsules? Rachel nodded slowly. That's exactly what Dr. Webb suggested. If someone was administering digoxin regularly over a period of weeks, it would build up in the system. The victim would experience the symptoms David reported: dizziness, nausea, fatigue, confusion. And eventually, if the dose was high enough, or if combined with something that lowered potassium levels, it would cause fatal cardiac arrest. Can we prove it? I asked desperately. Can we prove that's what happened? Rachel's expression was grave. That's where it gets complicated. A year has passed. David's body was cremated, correct? The word hit me like a punch. Yes. Linda insisted on cremation. She said it was what David would have wanted, that he'd told her he didn't want to be buried. Had he told you that? I shook my head. No, we'd never discussed it. But I was in no state to argue with her. I let her make the decisions. So there's no way to do additional testing on David's remains. The cremation eliminated any physical evidence. Rachel sat back in her chair. However, that doesn't mean we can't build a case. We have the autopsy report showing elevated digoxin and low potassium. We have David's statements to Pastor James and to his co-worker Robert about feeling ill after taking supplements Linda gave him. We have the insurance policy with a significant payout. And we have inconsistencies in Linda's story about the night David died. The timeline, I said. Jessica from book club said Linda was there when she got the call about David, around 9:30 or later. But Linda told me she found him when she came home around 9:30. Rachel made a note. I'll need to interview Jessica formally, get her exact recollection of that evening. If we can prove Linda lied about the timeline, that's important. It suggests consciousness of guilt. What do we do now? Pastor James asked. Do we go to the police? Not yet. We need more. The police aren't going to reopen a year-old case unless we can give them something solid. Right now, we have pieces of a puzzle, but we need to put more of them together. Rachel looked at me. Mrs. Wilson, I need you to think very carefully. Is there anything else you remember about the weeks before David died? Anything Linda said or did that seemed odd at the time? I closed my eyes, forcing myself to think past the grief and confusion of that period. She was very concerned about his health, I said slowly. She called me several times, said David had been working too hard, that he needed to slow down. She said she was worried about him. Setting up the narrative, Rachel muttered, making sure people knew he'd been unwell so his death wouldn't be a complete surprise. And she was very involved in planning the funeral, I continued, very quick to make decisions. She had him cremated within 4 days of his death. At the time, I thought she was just being efficient, helping me because I was too devastated to handle things. But now it looks like she was eliminating evidence. Pastor James finished. Rachel tapped her pen against her legal pad. Here's what I propose. We need to gather more information quietly. Wilson, can you think of any way to find out if Linda still has those supplements David was taking? Or any medication from that time period? I don't know. She moved to a new place. She probably threw everything away, maybe. Or maybe she kept some things. David's belongings, personal items. Would she have saved anything like that? I thought about Emma and Tyler. The kids. She might have saved things for the kids. Photos, David's watch, personal items they could have when they're older. Could you ask to see those things? Say you want to look through some of David's belongings for your own closure. The idea made my stomach turn. Going to Linda's condo, sitting with her, pretending I just wanted memories of my son when really I was looking for evidence that she'd murdered him. I suppose I could try. You don't have to do this, Rachel said gently. We can find other ways. No. I straightened my spine. No, I'll do it, whatever it takes to find the truth. Pastor James looked worried. Margaret, if Linda suspects anything, you could be putting yourself in danger. The thought had occurred to me. If Linda had killed David, what would stop her from hurting me if she felt threatened? But David was my child, my only child, and mothers protect their children, even after death. I'll be careful, I said. I'll make sure someone knows where I am. I'll go during the day when the kids are home from school. She won't do anything with her children there. Rachel didn't look entirely convinced, but she nodded. All right, but I want you to keep your phone on you at all times. If anything feels wrong, any moment at all, you leave immediately. Understand? I understand. There's something else. Rachel pulled out another document. I did some digging into Linda's financial records, just the public stuff, property records, credit reports that are accessible. She bought that new condo for $400,000. Cash. No mortgage. My eyes widened. Cash! And she's been spending freely over the past year. New car, expensive clothes based on her social media posts, frequent travel. She's going through that insurance money like water. That's not suspicious on its own, Pastor James pointed out. She did receive a large payout? True. But there's more. I found out that Linda tried to take out another life insurance policy on David about 4 months before he died. A policy for $1 million. But the insurance company denied it because David already had the other policy, and they flagged it as excessive coverage for someone with his income level. I felt cold all over. She tried to insure him for more. She did. And when that didn't work, she went ahead with what she had. $750,000. Not as much as she wanted, but still a fortune. That's premeditation, Pastor James said. That's evidence of planning. It helps our case, yes. It shows financial motive and forethought. Rachel closed the file. Here's my concern, though. All of this is circumstantial. Elevated digoxin levels that could be explained away. An insurance policy that, while large, isn't illegal. Inconsistencies in timelines that could be chalked up to faulty memory during a traumatic event. A defense attorney would tear this apart. So what are you saying? I asked, feeling my hopes start to crumble. I'm saying we need something concrete. Something that directly ties Linda to David's death. A witness who saw her giving him medication. Physical evidence of the supplements. A confession. Something. How do we get that? Rachel was quiet for a moment. Sometimes, guilty people make mistakes. They get comfortable. They think they've gotten away with it. And they slip up. We need to create opportunities for Linda to slip up. You want me to wear a wire? I asked incredulously. Not yet. But maybe. For now, I want you to spend time with her. Bring up David's death naturally in conversation. See if she contradicts herself. Ask questions about that night, about his health in the weeks before, about the insurance. Make it seem like you're just a grieving mother trying to make sense of her loss. People who've committed crimes often can't help themselves. They want to talk about it, justify it, relive it. If Linda killed David, part of her wants to tell someone. We just need to give her the opportunity. The idea terrified me. But I nodded. There's one more thing, Rachel said. The note. The anonymous note that started all of this. We still don't know who sent it. That person knows something, and we need to find out who they are. How do we do that? The insurance documents in the envelope, those had to come from somewhere. Either from the insurance company itself or from someone with access to Linda's files. I'm going to reach out to some contacts, see if I can trace where those documents originated. In the meantime, think about anyone in Linda's life who might have suspicions about her. Her sister, friends, someone from David's work. I thought about Diane, Linda's sister. Sweet, soft-spoken Diane. Had she sent the note? Did she suspect her own sister? And Robert Henshaw from David's work. He'd seemed troubled at the memorial service. He'd tried to tell me something before Linda shut him down. I could talk to Robert, I said. David's coworker. He seemed like he wanted to tell me something yesterday. Do it. But be subtle. Just say you're trying to understand what David's last days were like. Don't mention the investigation. We can't let word get back to Linda. We talked for another hour, going over details, planning next steps. By the time Pastor James and I left Rachel's office, it was nearly noon, and I felt like I'd aged 10 years. You sure you want to do this, Margaret? Pastor James asked as we drove back to my house. This is going to be dangerous. And painful. I'm sure, I said. David didn't get to fight for himself, but I can fight for him now. When I got home, there was a text message on my phone from Linda. Hi, Margaret. The kids really want to see you. How about you come over for dinner Friday night, 6 p.m. I'll cook. Love you? I stared at the message for a long time. Friday was 3 days away. 3 days to prepare myself. 3 days to get ready to sit across a dinner table from the woman who'd murdered my son and smile like everything was fine. I texted back, that sounds wonderful. I'll be there. Can't wait to see Emma and Tyler. Then I sat down at my kitchen table and cried. Not the soft, sad tears I'd been crying for a year. These were hard, angry tears. Tears of rage and betrayal and heartbreak. But underneath the tears something else was growing. Determination. Linda thought she was safe. She thought she'd gotten away with murder. She was inviting me into her home, probably planning to play the loving daughter-in-law to keep up the charade. She had no idea that I knew the truth, or that I was coming for her. Friday couldn't come soon enough. The 3 days before Friday dinner felt like 3 years. I barely slept, barely ate. Every time I closed my eyes I rehearsed what I would say, how I would act, what I would look for in Linda's condo. Rachel had coached me extensively. Don't be obvious, she'd said. Don't go snooping through drawers or asking pointed questions. Just be a grandmother who misses her son and wants to spend time with her grandchildren. Observe. Listen. Let Linda talk. Guilty people often want to talk about their crimes, even if they don't realize they're doing it. Pastor James had wanted to come with me, but we decided it would look too suspicious. Linda would wonder why I needed a chaperone. So instead, he made me promise to call him the moment I left her place, and to text him every hour I was there so he'd know I was safe. If I don't hear from you by 9 p.m., I'm calling the police, he'd said firmly. Now it was Friday evening, and I was standing outside Linda's condo building, clutching a box of cookies I'd baked that morning, chocolate chip, Emma's favorite. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped them. The building was new and expensive looking, all glass and steel with a fancy lobby and a doorman. I gave my name, and the doorman called up to Linda's unit. "Mrs. Wilson is here to see you, Miss Carter," he said into the phone. Then to me, 11th floor, unit 1147, elevators to your right. I rode up alone, watching the numbers climb. My heart was beating so fast I thought I might pass out. When the elevator doors opened on the 11th floor, I stood there for a moment, trying to steady myself. "You can do this, Margaret. For David, you can do this." Unit 1147 was at the end of a long, quiet hallway. Before I could knock, the door flew open and Tyler came barreling out. "Grandma!" He crashed into me with the force of a small hurricane, and I had to grab the doorframe to keep from falling over. But oh, it felt good to hold him. To smell his little boy smell of soap and grass and cookies. "Tyler, baby! Oh, let me look at you!" I held him at arm's length. He'd grown at least 2 inches since I'd last seen him. His face was fuller, more mature, 10 years old now, double digits. "Mom said you were bringing cookies. Did you bring the chocolate chip ones? Those are my favorite." "I did, sweetheart. Just for you?" "Tyler, let Grandma breathe." Linda appeared in the doorway, looking effortlessly beautiful in designer jeans and a soft cashmere sweater. Her smile was warm and welcoming. "Margaret, come in, come in. Don't just stand in the hallway." I followed them inside, and my breath caught. The condo was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the city skyline. Modern furniture that looked like it cost more than my car. Original art on the walls. A gourmet kitchen with stainless steel appliances. All bought with blood money. "This is beautiful," I said, because that's what a normal person would say. "Thank you. It took me a while to find the right place, but I think it's perfect for us. Plenty of room for the kids, great schools nearby, and the building has amazing amenities. There's a gym, a pool, even a kids' playroom on the 3rd floor. $400,000 cash." Rachel's words echoed in my head. "Grandma." Emma appeared from what must have been her bedroom. At 13, she was becoming a young woman, all long legs and uncertain grace. She gave me a hug that was more reserved than Tyler's but no less genuine. "I'm so glad you're here. I missed you." "I missed you too, sweetheart. Both of you. So much." We settled in the living room while Linda finished preparing dinner. The kids sat close to me on the couch, Tyler chattering about school and his new obsession with basketball, Emma showing me photos on her phone of her and her friends. I soaked it all in, these precious moments with my grandchildren, while part of my brain stayed alert, observing everything. The condo was almost too perfect. Like a showroom. There were a few photos of David scattered around, one of him with the kids at the beach, one from his and Linda's wedding, but not many. Most of the photos were new ones taken in the past year. Linda with the kids at Disney World, Linda and Diane at some fancy restaurant, the kids at their new school. Moving on. That's what it looked like. Moving on from David like he'd never existed. "Dinner's ready?" Linda called from the kitchen. The dining table was set beautifully with real china and cloth napkins. Linda had made pot roast with all the fixings, potatoes, carrots, green beans. It looked delicious, and I forced myself to eat even though my stomach was in knots. "This is wonderful, Linda," I said. "You've really outdone yourself. I wanted it to be special. We don't see you enough, Margaret. That's my fault. I've been so busy with the kids' activities and getting settled here. But we need to do this more often. The kids need their grandmother." Was that a subtle dig? A reminder that she controlled my access to Emma and Tyler? "I'd love that," I said carefully. "Anytime you want to bring them by, or if you need me to babysit." "Oh, we have a great babysitter now. College girl from the university, very reliable. But sure, maybe once in a while." Linda took a sip of her wine. Red wine, expensive looking. How are you doing, Margaret, really? This past year must have been so hard on you. It has been. Not a day goes by that I don't think about David. I know, me too. Linda's eyes got misty. Some days I still can't believe he's gone. That he's not gonna walk through that door. She gestured vaguely, even though David had never lived in this condo. The kids still talk about him all the time. Don't you, babies? Emma nodded. Looking down at her plate, Tyler said, I miss Dad. I wish he could see me play basketball. My heart clenched. He'd be so proud of you, Tyler. Both of you. He loved you so much. I know, Tyler said quietly. There was a moment of heavy silence, and then Linda brightened artificially. But we're doing okay, aren't we? We're surviving. We're even thriving in some ways. David would want us to be happy, to live our lives. That's what I keep telling myself. Thriving. On his life insurance money. I took a bite of pot roast and chewed slowly, giving myself time to choose my words. I've been thinking a lot about that last day, I said softly. About what happened. Do you mind talking about it? I know it's painful. Linda's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. More guarded, of course. What do you want to know? I guess I'm trying to understand. How did he seem that day? Was he feeling sick? Did he say anything? Linda set down her fork. Emma and Tyler were watching their mother carefully. He'd been under the weather for a few weeks. You knew that, right? He'd been to the doctor, but they said it was just stress. He was working so hard on that project at work. I kept telling him to slow down, to take better care of himself. What about that night? The night I couldn't finish. I had my book club meeting, Linda said, her voice taking on a rehearsed quality. I left around 6:30. David was tired, said he was going to lie down for a bit. I asked if he wanted me to stay home, but he insisted I go, said he'd be fine. When I got home around 9:30, I found him. Her voice broke convincingly. He was in our bedroom, on the floor. I called 911 right away, but it was too late. Jessica's words came back to me. She said Linda's phone rang at 9:30 or later, while Linda was still at book club. That must have been so terrifying, I said. Finding him like that. It was the worst moment of my life. Linda reached for her wine glass. The absolute worst. The paramedics tried everything, but his heart had already stopped. The doctor said it was massive cardiac arrest. There was nothing anyone could have done. I watched her face carefully. She was good. Very good. Her eyes were genuinely wet, her voice appropriately shaken. If I hadn't known what I knew, I would have believed every word. Kids, why don't you go watch TV for a bit while Grandma and I have some grown-up talk? Linda said suddenly. Emma and Tyler exchanged glances but did as they were told, disappearing into the living room. I heard the TV turn on, some cartoon show that Tyler liked. Once they were gone, Linda leaned forward. Margaret, I need to ask you something. At the memorial service the other day, you seemed, I don't know, distant. Like something was bothering you. Is everything okay? My blood ran cold. She had noticed. Of course she had. I'm fine, I said quickly. It was just a hard day. Facing all those people, talking about David. Are you sure? Because Pastor James seemed tense too. Like he was watching me. She laughed, but it didn't reach her eyes. I know that sounds paranoid, but I got this weird vibe from both of you. This was dangerous territory. I had to deflect, had to make her believe everything was normal. Pastor James is just protective of me, I said. He's been like that since my husband died. And I was emotional that day. I'm sorry if I seemed distant. I didn't mean to. Linda studied me for a long moment. You know you can talk to me about anything, right? If something's bothering you, if you're struggling with the grief, I'm here. The audacity of it, the sheer gall. She was sitting here pretending to care, when she was the reason I was grieving in the first place. I forced a smile. I know, thank you. You've been so good to me this year. She seemed to relax a bit. I try. I know how close you and David were. Losing him has been hard on all of us, but especially you. Have you thought about seeing a therapist? Someone to help you process the grief. Was she trying to make me seem unstable? Planting seeds that I was mentally unwell? I've thought about it, I said carefully. Maybe I will. I think you should. Grief can do strange things to people. It can make them see connections that aren't there, read meaning into things that are just coincidence. A therapist could help with that. My pulse quickened. What was she saying? Did she suspect I was investigating? Before I could respond, Tyler ran back into the dining room. Mom, can Grandma see my room? I want to show her my new basketball trophy. Of course, sweetie. Margaret, would you like the grand tour? I'd love that. I followed Linda and the kids through the condo. Tyler's room was covered in sports posters and action figures. Emma's was surprisingly mature, all soft grays and whites with a reading nook and a laptop on her desk. "And this is my room," Linda said, opening the door at the end of the hall. It was enormous. King-size bed, walk-in closet, attached bathroom that looked like something from a luxury hotel. On the dresser was a single framed photo of David, one I recognized from their 5th wedding anniversary. "I keep him close," Linda said, noticing me looking at it. "Even though he's gone, he's still part of this family." I noticed something else on her dresser. A pill organizer, one of those plastic containers with compartments for each day of the week. "Do you take medication?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Linda glanced at the pill organizer. "Oh, just vitamins. Multivitamin, vitamin D, fish oil. Boring stuff. I learned from David's death that you have to take care of your health. You never know when it could all end. Vitamins, supplements, just like the ones she'd given David." My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Pastor James. "You okay?" I quickly typed back, "Yes, all good." "Everything all right?" Linda asked. "Just Pastor James checking in. He worries. He seems very protective of you." Something in her tone. Has he said anything to you?" "About me?" My heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" "I just got the feeling at the memorial service that he didn't like me very much. Which is weird because we've always gotten along fine. I wondered if he'd said something to you." "No, nothing like that. Why would he?" Linda shrugged, but her eyes were sharp. "No reason. Just a feeling." We went back to the living room, and I spent the next hour playing board games with Emma and Tyler, cherishing every laugh, every smile. They were good kids. David had raised them to be kind and smart and funny, and their mother had killed him. Around 8:30, I said I should get going. Linda walked me to the door while the kids gave me goodbye hugs. "Thank you for coming," Linda said. "Let's not wait so long next time. Maybe you can come over for Thanksgiving. We're not doing anything big, just the 3 of us, but your family." "That sounds nice," I said, though I knew that by Thanksgiving, everything would have changed. One way or another, the truth would be out. As I waited for the elevator, I heard Linda's door close and lock behind me. I looked at the polished wood, thinking about what lay behind it. A murderer. A woman who'd systematically poisoned her husband for money, and was now living in luxury while playing the devoted widow and mother. The elevator ride down felt longer than the ride up. When I got to my car, I sat in the driver's seat for a full minute before my hands stopped shaking enough to turn the key. Then I called Pastor James. "I'm out," I said. "I'm okay. But James, she suspects something. She asked me point blank if you'd said anything to me about her. She knows we're watching her. Did you get anything useful?" "Maybe. She has a pill organizer on her dresser. Says it's just vitamins, but I don't know. And she lied about the timeline again. Stuck to her story about coming home at 9:30 and finding David. She's rehearsed it so many times she almost believes it herself. You need to tell Rachel?" "Tomorrow, I will, James. The worst part was seeing Emma and Tyler. They're such good kids. When this all comes out, when they find out what their mother did." My voice broke. "I know," Pastor James said softly. "I know. But Margaret, those kids deserve to know the truth about their father. They deserve to know he didn't just abandon them to a heart attack, that he fought to stay with them, that someone took him away. He was right. I knew he was right. I drove home in a daze, and when I got there, I found another envelope on my doorstep. My blood ran cold. Not again. With shaking hands, I picked it up and carried it inside. This time I didn't hesitate. I ripped it open. Inside was a single piece of paper, a printout of text messages. Between David and someone named R.H. Robert Henshaw. I realized the texts were from 3 days before David died. "David, Rob. I stopped taking those supplements Linda gave me, but I still feel like hell. Worse, actually. Arman, you need to see a different doctor. Like, today. David, I know. I will. But what if it's something serious? What if something's really wrong with me? RH, and then you need to know. For your kids, for your mom. Get checked out. David, you're right. I'll call Dr. Patterson tomorrow, get a second opinion." "Thanks, man." "Anytime, bro. You got this?" Below the text was a handwritten note in the same block letters as before. "He Nivermedi I hot epi onanti. Each died Tito dies aftais con veritan escaratis conized Robert." Robert was my mystery friend, and he had proof that David had planned to see another doctor. Proof that David had suspected something was wrong. Proof that might help us put Linda away. I grabbed my phone and called Rachel, not caring that it was almost 9 p.m. "Rachel, I got another envelope." You need to see this, now. Rachel met me at a 24-hour diner on the edge of town. It was nearly 10 p.m., but she'd come immediately when I called. Pastor James was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with 2 cups of coffee in front of him. I slid into the booth and pushed the envelope across the table to Rachel. She read the text messages twice, her expression growing more intense with each pass. "This is it," she said quietly. "This is what we need." "Robert sent the envelopes?" I asked. "Both of them?" "Almost certainly. He had access to David's text messages because they worked together. He probably knew David well enough to have concerns about Linda, and he's been trying to help us without putting himself directly in the line of fire." "Why not just come to us?" Pastor James asked. "Why the secrecy?" Rachel set the paper down. "Fear, probably. If Linda killed David and Robert suspects it, then he knows what she's capable of. He's protecting himself and his family. But he also wants justice for his friend, so he's giving us the tools to build a case." "What do we do now?" I asked. Rachel pulled out her phone. "Now we call Robert directly. We get him to talk to us on the record. With these text messages and his testimony about David's condition in the days before his death, combined with the autopsy findings and the insurance policy, we have enough to take to the police." "Will they listen?" I asked. "Will they really reopen a year-old case, with what we have now?" "Yes, I think they will." Rachel started typing on her phone. "I'm going to reach out to a detective I know in the homicide division. Garrett Murphy. He's good at his job, and he doesn't ignore evidence just because it's inconvenient. If we present this to him, he'll look into it." My heart was racing. After all this time, after all the pain and uncertainty, we were finally close. Close to the truth, close to justice. "What about Linda?" I asked. "If the police start investigating, she'll know. She'll lawyer up, maybe destroy evidence. That's a risk," Rachel admitted. "But we don't have a choice. We've gathered all the information we can on our own. Now we need law enforcement involved. They have resources we don't. They can subpoena phone records, financial documents, medical files. They can interview people formally, put pressure on witnesses. They can do things we can't." I thought about Linda, about how she'd looked at me tonight with those calculating eyes, asking if Pastor James had said anything about her. She already suspected something. How long before she figured out we were investigating her? "She's going to run," I said suddenly. "If she even gets a hint that the police are looking at her, she's going to take Emma and Tyler and disappear." Rachel and Pastor James exchanged glances. "That's why we need to move fast," Rachel said. "I'm going to call Detective Murphy tonight. We'll meet with him first thing tomorrow morning, all of us, including Robert if he's willing. We lay out everything we have, and then it's in the hands of the police." "And what do?" I asked. "Just sit at home and wait?" "Yes," Rachel said firmly. "You stay away from Linda. No more visits, no phone calls, no contact. If she reaches out to you, you keep it brief and neutral. We can't give her any reason to suspect we're closing in." I nodded. But the thought of sitting idle while Linda walked around free made me physically ill. Rachel made her phone call right there in the diner, speaking in low tones with Detective Murphy. From what I could hear, he was skeptical at first, but as Rachel laid out the basics of our case, his tone changed. By the end of the call, he'd agreed to meet with us at 8 a.m. the next morning at the police station. "He's interested," Rachel said after hanging up. "Very interested. The insurance angle got his attention. So did the elevated digoxin levels in the autopsy. Now we just need to get Robert on board," Pastor James said. Rachel pulled up something on her phone. "I found Robert Henshaw's contact information through David's old company directory. I'm going to call him now. Mrs. Wilson, you should be the one to talk to him. He trusted David, and he's been trying to help you. He'll respond better to you than to me." She dialed the number and handed me the phone. It rang 3 times before a nervous voice answered. "Hello, Robert. Robert Henshaw. This is Margaret Wilson." There was a long pause. "Mrs. Wilson, how did you get this number?" "I know it was you," I said gently. "The envelopes, the insurance policy, the text messages. You've been trying to help me find out what happened to David, and I want to thank you." Another pause, longer this time. When Robert spoke again, his voice was thick with emotion. "He was my friend, my best friend at work, and I knew something was wrong. I knew it, but I didn't do anything. I didn't push hard enough for him to see another doctor. I didn't." "It's not your fault," I said firmly. "Robert, none of this is your fault. But I need your help now. I need you to talk to the police, tell them everything you know. Will you do that?" "The police," He sounded terrified. Mrs. Wilson, I have a family. If Linda finds out I've been helping you, if she knows I suspect her, the police will protect you. They'll take your statement and they'll investigate. You won't be alone in this. Please, Robert. For David, he deserves justice. I heard him take a shaky breath. Okay. Okay, I'll do it. When? Tomorrow morning. 8 a.m. at the main police station. Can you be there? I'll be there. After I hung up, the three of us sat in silence for a moment. Everything was in motion now. There was no going back. You should go home and try to sleep, Rachel said. Tomorrow is going to be a long day. But I didn't sleep. How could I? I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about David, about the little boy who'd brought me dandelions and called them flowers, about the teenager who'd mowed lawns to save money for college, about the man who'd called me every Sunday without fail, about how he'd died slowly, poisoned by the woman he'd trusted most, and nobody had known. Nobody had helped him. Tomorrow, that would change. The police station was a gray concrete building downtown, all harsh fluorescent lights and institutional furniture. Detective Garrett Murphy met us in a conference room on the second floor. He was maybe 50, with salt and pepper hair and tired eyes that had seen too much. Robert Henshaw was already there when we arrived, looking pale and nervous. He gave me a small nod. For the next 3 hours, we laid it all out. Rachel presented the evidence methodically, the insurance policy, the autopsy report with its elevated digoxin levels, the text messages between David and Robert. I told him about David's visit to Pastor James, about his symptoms in the weeks before his death. Robert described David's declining health, his concerns about the supplements Linda had given him, his plan to see a different doctor. Detective Murphy took notes, asked questions, and said very little. His face was unreadable. Finally, when we'd shown him everything, he sat back in his chair and was quiet for a long moment. "This is compelling," he said at last. "I'm not going to lie to you, it's circumstantial, and a defense attorney would have a field day with some of it. But there's enough here to warrant a deeper investigation." My heart leaped. "So you'll reopen the case?" "I'll take it to my lieutenant. We'll need to do some legwork, verify the insurance documents, interview the book club members about that night, subpoena Linda Carter's financial records and phone records from the time period around David's death. We'll need to talk to the medical examiner again, have a toxicologist review the autopsy findings." "How long will that take?" I asked. "A few weeks, maybe a month. These things take time, Mrs. Wilson. We have to be thorough, build an airtight case. If Linda Carter did this, I don't want her walking on a technicality." "What about in the meantime?" Pastor James asked. "Mrs. Wilson had dinner at Linda's home last night, and Linda was asking questions, acting suspicious. What if she runs?" Detective Murphy considered this. "We can put a flag on her passport, make sure she doesn't try to leave the country, and we'll start the investigation immediately. Quietly. If she doesn't know we're looking at her, she won't run." "She knows something's wrong," I said. "Maybe she doesn't know we're investigating, but she knows I'm suspicious. I could see it in her eyes." "Then stay away from her," Murphy said firmly. "No contact. If she reaches out to you, keep it brief and give her no indication that anything has changed. Can you do that?" I nodded. "Good. Now I need all of you to keep this absolutely confidential. Don't talk about this investigation with anyone outside this room. Don't post anything on social media. Don't gossip with friends. If word gets back to Linda that we're building a case, it could compromise everything." "Understood," we all agreed. As we filed out of the conference room, Detective Murphy pulled me aside. "Mrs. Wilson, I want you to know I believe you. I've been doing this job for 26 years, and I've seen a lot of cases like this. Spouse murders for insurance money, stages it to look like natural causes. If that's what happened here, we're going to prove it, and we're going to make sure she pays." Tears sprang to my eyes. "Thank you. Thank you so much. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when she's behind bars." The next 4 weeks were the longest of my life. Detective Murphy had told me to go about my normal routine, to not do anything that might alert Linda to the investigation. So that's what I did. I went to church on Sundays, I had lunch with friends, I worked in my garden, and I waited. Linda texted me twice, once to send photos of Emma and Tyler at a school event, once to ask if I wanted to come over for Thanksgiving dinner. I responded politely but briefly, made an excuse about already having plans with Pastor James's family. I could feel her watching me, even through the distance, trying to read me, trying to figure out if I knew. Rachel called me every few days with updates. The police had interviewed Jessica and the other women from the book club. Their statements confirmed that Linda had been there that night, that she'd received a phone call around 9:40 p.m. and had then rushed out, claiming David had collapsed. But here's what was interesting: Linda had been checking her phone obsessively all evening. According to the book club members, every few minutes she'd glance at it, like she was waiting for something. Waiting for David to die. The police had also interviewed David's primary care physician. The doctor confirmed that David had called his office 3 days before his death, asking for a referral to a cardiologist. He'd said he was having symptoms that concerned him and wanted a second opinion. An appointment had been scheduled for the day after he died. He'd been so close to getting help. The financial investigation revealed more damning evidence. Linda had purchased the life insurance policy 8 months before David's death, and the premiums had been coming out of an account David rarely checked, a savings account that Linda managed. She'd been careful, paying the premiums with automatic withdrawal, so they wouldn't show up on their regular checking account statements. She'd also done extensive internet searches in the months before David's death. The police had obtained her browser history from her laptop, which she'd apparently never thought to scrub. Searches for digoxin overdose symptoms. How long does digoxin stay in system? Digoxin and potassium. Can autopsy detect digoxin poisoning? How to make death look like heart attack. She'd been planning this for months. The toxicologist had reviewed David's autopsy report and consulted with the original medical examiner. His opinion: the elevated digoxin levels, combined with the low potassium, were consistent with intentional poisoning. While it couldn't be proven definitively without David's body, which Linda had cremated, the circumstantial evidence was overwhelming. 4 weeks and 2 days after our meeting with Detective Murphy, Rachel called me. "They're arresting her today," she said. "Right now, actually. Murphy wanted me to let you know." I sat down heavily on my couch. "They have enough. Murder in the first degree, insurance fraud, and a few other charges. The DA thinks it's a strong case. Margaret, we did it. We got justice for David." I should have felt triumph, relief, something positive. Instead, I just felt hollow. "What about Emma and Tyler?" I asked. "Where will they go?" "Child Protective Services will place them temporarily. Linda's sister Diane has already petitioned for custody. But Margaret, you're the grandmother. If you want to fight for custody, you'd have a strong case. Custody. Raising Emma and Tyler. Being their guardian, their parent. It's what David would have wanted." "I'll fight," I said. "I'll fight for them." The arrest made the news that night. Local woman arrested in husband's poisoning death. There was Linda's photo, being led out of her luxury condo in handcuffs, her face a mask of rage and disbelief. She'd thought she was untouchable. She'd thought she'd gotten away with it. She'd been wrong. The trial took 8 months. The media called it the Black Widow case. Every detail came out: the insurance policy, the forged signature, the internet searches, the text messages showing David's deteriorating health, the testimonies from Robert and Pastor James, and the book club members about Linda's behavior. Linda's defense attorney tried everything. He argued that the digoxin levels could be explained by David's self-medicating with old prescription pills. He claimed the internet searches were innocent research after David had expressed concerns about his heart. He said Linda had been a devoted wife and mother, that the prosecution's case was built on speculation and circumstantial evidence. But the jury didn't buy it. The evidence was too overwhelming, the pattern too clear. After 3 days of deliberation, they came back with a verdict. Guilty on all counts. I was in the courtroom when they read it. I watched Linda's face crumple, watched her lawyer put a hand on her shoulder. I watched Emma and Tyler, who'd been living with me since the arrest, sit stone-faced in the gallery, trying to process that their mother had killed their father. At sentencing, the judge gave Linda life in prison without the possibility of parole. "You systematically poisoned your husband over a period of weeks," the judge said, his voice hard. "You watched him suffer. You ignored his pleas for help. You eliminated any chance he had of getting proper medical treatment. And you did it all for money. You stole a father from his children, a son from his mother, and a good man from this world. You deserve every day of the sentence I'm giving you." Linda was led away in handcuffs. She didn't look at me, didn't look at her children. Just stared straight ahead, her face empty. That was 2 years ago. Today is the 3rd anniversary of David's death, and I'm sitting in my backyard with Emma and Tyler. Emma is 15 now, tall and poised, dealing with her trauma through therapy and writing. She started a blog about children of incarcerated parents, trying to help others in similar situations. Tyler is 12, still obsessed with basketball, still occasionally having nightmares about his father. But he's healing, they both are. It hasn't been easy. There were days when Emma screamed at me that I'd ruined their lives by turning in their mother. Days when Tyler cried and said he wanted his dad back. Days when I wondered if I'd done the right thing, if pursuing justice had been worth the pain it caused these children. But then I remember David's face. I remember his kindness, his goodness. I remember how he fought to stay alive, how he knew something was wrong and tried to save himself. And I know I did the right thing. Robert Henshaw comes by sometimes. He and Tyler play basketball in the driveway. He's told me more than once that he's glad he found the courage to come forward, even though it was terrifying. David was my friend, he says. He deserved better than what she did to him. Pastor James still checks on us every week, still prays with us, still reminds us that healing is possible even from the deepest wounds. Rachel Thompson has become a friend, not just a lawyer. She helped me fight for custody of the kids, helped me navigate the complex legal and emotional aftermath of the trial. She tells me I'm one of the strongest people she knows. I don't feel strong most days. I just feel like a mother who lost her child and refused to let his death be in vain. The life insurance money, all $750,000, was awarded to David's estate, which meant it went to Emma and Tyler. I set up trust funds for both of them, for college and their futures. Money that should have been used to care for them with their father still alive, not blood money from his murder. Sometimes, late at night, I think about that first envelope that appeared under my door, about Robert's courage in reaching out, in giving me the tools to seek justice, about how easily Linda could have gotten away with it if he hadn't spoken up. And I think about all the other cases that might be out there. Other spouses who died unexpectedly, ruled natural causes, when really they were murdered. Other families who never got answers, never got justice. David's case shone a light on how easy it is to get away with murder if you're smart and patient and willing to be cruel. The local medical examiner's office changed their protocols after David's case. Now, any sudden death with a significant life insurance policy triggers additional scrutiny. It's a small change, but it might save lives. As I sit here with my grandchildren, watching the sunset on this November evening, I think about David, about the boy he was and the man he became, about the life he should have had and the years that were stolen from him. Grandma. Emma's voice breaks into my thoughts. Are you okay? I look at her so much like her father, with his kind eyes and gentle spirit, and I nod. I'm okay, sweetheart. I was just thinking about your dad. Good thoughts. The best thoughts. About how proud he'd be of both of you. About how much he loved you. Tyler leans against my shoulder. I wish he was here. Me too, baby. Me too. But he's not here. He was taken from us by someone who claimed to love him, someone who valued money more than his life. But we got justice. We made sure the truth came out. We made sure she paid for what she did. And now, every day, I try to honor David's memory by being the grandmother these children need, by giving them the love and stability he would have wanted them to have, by teaching them that truth matters, that justice matters, that standing up for what's right is worth the cost. It's not the life any of us imagined. It's not the happy ending we wanted, but it's the truth. And sometimes, truth and justice are the only endings we get. As the sun sets and the sky turns pink and gold, I pull my grandchildren close. Your father was a good man, I tell them. And he's still watching over us, every single day. And I believe that. I have to believe that. Because otherwise the darkness of what happened would swallow us whole. Instead, we choose light. We choose healing. We choose to live. For David. For ourselves. For the future he wanted us to have. And that's the greatest justice of all.